Two.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining tonight's webinar. This is pre-recorded so that you can pause, stop, and watch at your leisure. So tonight we're talking all about study abroad. Going to run through a couple different things about it. So first, to start off, I think is a really important question for if you're just deciding to study abroad to ask yourself is, why are you doing this? You know, like what benefit will this have to you? A lot of people will tell you that they do study abroad because they are a vacation from their typical courseworks, which usually they are, but they shouldn't be a useless vacation. They should, you should make sure that the credits that you're getting abroad contribute to your major in some way, or maybe that you select a location that will benefit your future career. So for example, if you're interested in fashion, maybe picking Paris or Milan or Spain, or classes that are focused or rooted in what you're interested in would be ideal. And picking different classes that will continue to help shape your entire experience in college, you know, what you're there for. Definitely take some time to look at your degree worksheet. I know every school has some version of this where it has a listing of all of the courses that you have to take, courses, and make sure that you're working within that so that you kind of have an idea of where you are before you go abroad and how those classes that you take can fit into that, build towards graduation, and make sure that you don't have any surprises while you're abroad, that you may be taking a class that doesn't fit, or you may not be getting credits appropriately. The worst case scenario is to come back or to be abroad and have any kind of worries or stress about whether these classes will fit into your schedule. So definitely do some of your research beforehand to make sure that the classes you're selecting are the right classes, and that the location you're selecting is not only someplace that you're interested in, but something that can help in your professional development, networking, and building towards your career. So those are a couple quick things that I think are really important, making sure that you sit down with your advisor or your dean to what you're interested in and find a place that is best for you. So now we're going to have our lovely guests share some of their stories. So Joelle, I'll start with you since you lived abroad and have gone abroad several times. Share with us something that you loved, one of your favorite experiences, something unexpected, and something challenging.
Got you. So my name is Joelle. I graduated from Brandeis University in 2016, and I studied biology and health science society policy on the pre-med track. So one of the things that I really wanted to take advantage of while I was an undergrad was going abroad. And a common myth that many have, especially being pre-med, is that you don't have enough time to fit that into your schedule. So I had to make a deliberate choice to figure out how I would plan around the pre-medical schedule in order to fit study abroad in. And I ended up choosing to take my organic chemistry classes the summer before my third year of college. And that freed up time for me to go abroad my spring semester of my junior year. And I ended up studying with a program called School for International Training. And it took me to South Africa, where I studied community health and social policy. And that was, I think, a life-changing experience. It's something that I don't regret spending a summer at my school for at all. One of the things that I really enjoyed about it was the ability to live with a host family. So I actually had 4 host families in different communities, and one main host family in the city of Durban, South Africa. And I was living with the Zulu family. I was learning some isiZulu and just hanging out with my host brother. And that was just like a way into the lifestyle that they lived, and just learning more about the struggles they had, the things they enjoyed, and a way into that culture in a way. And I think that was a great time. One of the main things that I found interesting was this idea of identity, and how, depending on where I was, my personal identity shifted. So in South Africa, there are 4 main, I guess, races, and it's white, Black, Indian, and what they call colored. And so while I was in the Zulu community, I was pretty much seen as Black. But then I also had a host family that was Indian South African, and they kind of saw that I looked more Indian, and they found out that my mother was of Indian descent, so they saw me as Indian. And then random people on like the street would think I was colored or mixed because of the way that I appeared. So that's what I kind of found interesting about just that culture, the history of apartheid, and learning about all of that was something that was pretty cool. And yeah, it was great. I also had the opportunity to live in India for a year as a Fulbright scholar. So that was definitely another life changing experience. I was a teacher teaching English to 6th through 11th graders who came from, I guess, deprived backgrounds. So they were underprivileged, but they were some of the most talented and brightest students I've ever met in my life. And it was a great time as well.
Thank you so much for sharing. That's amazing. So now I'm going to ask Briana, CEO, please share something that you loved from one of your many trips abroad, favorite experience, something unexpected and something challenging.
Cool. So hi, Briana here. I went to Stony Brook University and did a double major in applied math and stats and technological systems management with a specialization in mechanical engineering. So with all of that, I started out as a mechanical engineering major, and similar to Joelle with like this myth of, oh, like there's no time in the schedule to do this. So I wasn't really sure if I was going to be able to fit it in. But because I knew it was something I wanted to do, I ended up doing a winter program, which is a short term, like 4 weeks abroad, where you get like, I think it's like 3 or 4 credits, about 2 classes. Abroad, and Stony Brook had a policy where I think they got rid of this now. It's just unfortunate. They should have done this a long time ago. But like there are all of these classes you have to take so you're well-rounded. And some of those classes were like art and like English and stuff like that. So I was able to take those classes abroad. But that came from, lots of hours in advising and in the dean's office and making sure that these courses would count for me. And that I wouldn't be wasting my time or my money doing this. So the first place I went to was Italy. And I did like 3 or 4 weeks in Rome, and we got to travel a lot. I think one of the most challenging things that I wasn't really anticipating was just going out with all of my friends the night before and then having to get up and go to class at like a couple hours later after being out all night or something like that, which is something that you deal with in college, but in a like international, it's just different because there's more freeing, there's more things you can do, and nobody's really checking for you. So it was just, I mean, like you can't procrastinate with some of that stuff. I knew plenty of people who would come in from like going to the Coliseum and then be like, oh, I'm not going to do that assignment. And it bit them in the ass, like at the end of it, because they didn't make the time to do that. The second experience I had going abroad was actually in my graduate program. So that's another thing. Like if you know that you won't be able to do this currently in undergrad, you can always consider doing it in grad school if you have the time to do it. I went to Japan again for another like 3-week short-term period because I was also working at the time. But I was able to, I think it was actually 2 weeks, finish up courses that I needed for my MBA at the time, and I worked it into my schedule. So something that I loved about Japan, I just love the technology and the fashion of Japan. It's just, there are trains there that move at like such high speeds, and I think Japan was the one place I've been to for sure where I was like, I can't fit in here. There are a lot of places like in South America or like countries in Africa or India where I've walked around and I've been like, oh, okay, yeah, I kind of look like some of these people. But Japan was definitely the first place I was like, yeah, I'm definitely foreign. I'm gaijin, like everything. So that was cool. And it was a different experience for me. So.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'll share a little bit about my abroad experience and introduce myself because I forgot to do that. But I am Nadia. I went to Babson. I double concentrated in global business management and legal studies. And I studied abroad in Singapore, Malaysia, Argentina, Chile, South Africa, and Dubai. Babson offered a lot of similar to Briana short-term week-long programs during winter break, Thanksgiving break, and spring break. So I took advantage of a lot of three of those to kind of fit it into my schedule. Because as mentioned before, a lot of people will tell you that you can't, but you should, you can always talk to your the abroad advisors that they have at your school to find programs that will work for you and fit in your schedule. I think my favorite experience abroad was in South Africa. I did a research project there in Cape Town on the European standard of beauty, and getting to talk to strangers every day to flesh out my research and kind of like just travel all over such a beautiful city, like so rich in culture, was amazing for me. It's definitely still my favorite city ever. I really loved being there for that purpose. I think that being there in a context of research and learning made the experience much different for me. Getting to interact with the people in that way and look at it from a different perspective was amazing. I think something unexpected for me was being in Argentina, and for the first time not for the first time, but being kind of polarized and othered. I remembered frequently walking down the street and I'd be being called like negrita, negrita, and they would like look at me like so surprised and shocked to see like a Black woman. And I was kind of taken aback by it first because like typically when you see those types of like interactions, it's usually racism in America. So I tried, while I was, down there studying, I tried to keep an open mind and not like jump to my immediate, like, self-defense mode kind of. And I just started asking questions, to my professors. And I was like, like, this is what happened to me when I'm walking down on the street and I get some kind of like funny stares, which happens as a person of color abroad. But it was interesting. It wasn't out of like racism or bias. It was more so just that they were shocked to see me. They don't see very many Black people, period, or let alone Black women. And then I had these long box braids that were, I guess much different from what the other women have down there for hairstyle. So my host mom kind of told me on day one, she said, you have long braids, you have long, like, so they're going to stare at you. And she just kind of told me flat out. And I was like, thanks for the heads up. And I didn't really like realize what it would be until walking down the street and having that experience. So I think what it taught me was to shift your mindset from not always being defensive, but to ask more questions and to engage. And I found that like in talking to strangers, it wasn't that they had any bias towards me from what they had heard about America or Black people from, TVs and media and so on and so forth. It was more so just that they were just shocked to see me in a way that shocked to see a person of a different race in an area that's predominantly one race. So I think something challenging would be I think that was it. It's just coming to terms with being a person of color who, traveling is a part of my identity, and having to kind of like prepare myself doubly when I'm going into a different city. It's not just, making sure that I have all my toiletries and making sure that I'm properly packed. It's also making sure that I have the right attitude and the right mindset going into a place that with people who don't look like me, don't understand me, and may have their mind made up about me from what they see on TV and media in a completely different language. So I think that that's something that is challenging, and that's kind of something that I struggle with and always think about. If I recently traveled abroad, and my first question to people who look like me, have been there, was, what was it like as a person of color? And that's always kind of like something that I'm interested to know, because I know that my experience in a country as a Black woman is going to be very different from a Black man's experience, a white woman's experience for sure, and people of other races. And I actually think that that is a perfect segue to talk about something else that we had on a topic for tonight, which is traveling as a person of color. So I'm going to open up the discussion to our other board members and Joelle here to talk about your experience abroad as a person of color, and some things that you've learned, and other things that you just want to talk about and share.
Got you. Yeah, it's very interesting being abroad as a person of color. As a Black man, I think, like you said, it can get misconstrued as people being racist when they interact with you. But I think a lot of times, many people have never interacted, first of all, with a Black person, but then again, a Black American. The concept of Black American confuses a lot of people, and there's a sense of ignorance that kind of comes with that from a lot of people. When I was in South Africa, my Indian, well, with the whole history of South Africa in general, there was a lot of with the apartheid, separation of race. So when I lived with my Indian South African host family, I knew more about the Zulu South Africans than they ever did. And both communities were about 20 minutes from each other. But because I had lived with them, I knew more than they did. It was just ingrained in the culture, that separation, and even though we're 20 years out of apartheid, you can still see the remnants of that deep history. And so me, being in that household kind of broke certain barriers as to oh, wow, I didn't really think of them as these kind of people. I just always looked down upon them and things like that. So I saw myself as someone who could break those barriers a bit. When I was in India, it was another interesting case. The first day I walked in, one of the assistant principals was like, "Oh, where in Africa are you from?" This was when she first met me. And I was like, "I'm actually from America, and, I'm going to be here for the year," and things like that. And so she was like, "Oh, wow." She's never come across, an American that wasn't white, And so that concept was very, very different than anything she's known. So I think my presence was just something that really kind of opened the eyes of people, who I was able to use it in a way where I can educate people that, there are Black Americans, and, we are here. And also, we're the same, despite the color, we're the same, so that was my experience with it.
Yeah, definitely. When I was in South Africa, that happened to me as well. We're sitting on the street, the other Black people, since it's a predominantly Black country, they would just keep it moving. I was just I looked like I was from there, and I just kind of fit in until I opened my mouth, and
they're what's going on?
I remember I was in a pizza shop in Italy, and I was there with one of my friends who I don't remember which country in North Africa she's from now, but she grew up in Switzerland, and she also speaks French. So she's speaking French with this Italian guy, and she tells him where she's from in Africa, and he looks at me and he thought I was East African. And I was like, nah, dude, I mean, it's possible. I'm sure it's there somewhere, but I mean, that's not where I can trace it to, So that was just interesting.
Yeah.
So, Briana, did you ever have any issues with, in terms of your hair while traveling abroad?
So when we went to India, when Matt, myself, Shakia, Shakia had twists. So every 5 seconds, people were coming up to Shakia. When I first got to India, my hair was straight. So people thought I was Indian. There were some of Joelle's friends that would just come up to me and be like, "Oh, she's from here, no?" And I was but once I washed my hair and it was curly, it was a little more okay, you're, where are you from? Kind of. But yeah, in Japan, no. In Italy, no. But you can tell like that they're not used to seeing you. You know, like people just stare. And just,
yeah, they definitely just stare. When I was in Argentina, like, you know, like we'd go out to the bars at night, you start like meeting strangers, talking to people, talking in Spanish, and they're like, they would like just like start touching my braids and like stop. But I mean, again, like just trying to be open-minded and like It's okay. You know, if we were anywhere else, I probably would approach that differently.
Yeah,
But, you know, because I'm abroad, like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I know
Yeah.
when I went to Japan, I was walking, one of my really good friends is Haitian, but moved to Japan, speaks fluent Japanese. He's just like another one of those, like, okay, you're just amazing person. And we were walking down the street. It was late, you know, and we happened to walk past this guy. I don't know, like if he was homeless or whatever, but he made some comment like as we were walking by, and like my friend translated to me, he was like, he was looking at you, like, and did not say some like, you know, like nice things, like not that it, but anywho, it was just like, it was weird. I was like, I didn't even like, there's this whole other like sexualization of like women and Black women that happens just like everywhere. And it was like, it was super uncomfortable. And I was glad that I was like there with him, because like, you know, first of all, now I know what you said, like, you creeper, like, and secondly, like, it's like, it's not just singular to the United States. And that's one of the things that I think is so great about studying abroad, is that you get to see these similarities and differences, just from where you're from.
Yeah, I agree. I think that that's something that, you know, definitely is something you have to be aware of wherever you are, but kind of like people who, you know, view women in a certain way, especially in different countries where the laws around women and like societal norms are completely different in America than they are abroad. You know, just like, you know, being more aware of your surroundings and where you are, and especially as a person of color, like, you know, that's something that we take with us wherever we go. But you know, it's always good to be aware of where you are, especially like if you go out, like you go out by yourself. Make sure that you have somebody who's in your cohort with you. Make friends. Don't leave anybody by themselves. Kind of like buddy system. A lot of rules of the same rules that apply here in the States, but like doubly sure when you're abroad. And then really quick, I wanted to go back to Matthew. I know Matthew also had some experiences abroad, and I wanted to have you share some of those. You can talk about you know, what it's like traveling as a person of color. You know, something that you loved or was your favorite experience from abroad, something unexpected and something challenging.
All right, take myself off mute. Well, yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Matthew Brown. I graduated from Babson College in 2015, and I had a double concentration in marketing and IT management. And my study abroad experience was going to Malaysia. And the whole premise behind going to Malaysia, we went there to study Islamic finance. And as you can imagine, Islamic finance is banking and finance based on the religion of Islam. And one of the more prevalent values in Islamic finance is being that you can have a loan with no interest. That's one of those things within the religion, is that whatever you take a loan for is that you repay the exact amount. So in short terms, there's no interest, right? And how that system of Islamic finance impacts how businesses operate and how they mitigate for risk and how they use that to grow and thrive. Malaysia is becoming one of the more prevalent financial powerhouses in Asia. So one of the things that I found really interesting, and just in terms of like diving into this, like the subject of Islamic finance, as you can imagine how different that is from operating here in the States. If any of you guys have student loans, you know how different it can be with your loans having interest or not interest. But one of the things that we did while we were there, we ended up working with the school, another business school, and we were able to connect with a lot of the college students there. Each one of them were working on their own separate business, and so we helped them with their pitches. We just kind of refined what they were working on and just brought our different perspective into their business plan, and just working with them and seeing them put together a pitch from start to finish. That was really their own like idea. Was really something that was rewarding. We knew that we were going to be doing that going into Malaysia, but I never expected the stories some of these kids had. I know one of the kids that I was working with, he had a business idea to like improve just like hasten his ability and his family's ability to make crops, which was like really, really interesting. Outside of that, I would say like just the experience in general was amazing. Beautiful landscape. When you go out, taste the food, immerse yourself in the culture as much as you can. Just taking the weather, the atmosphere, the language, and break that barrier of fear or whatever that is that might be holding you back, and just go for it. I know for me, I was traveling to Malaysia maybe like a month or two after that Malaysia flight disappeared, and so I was having second thoughts. But at the end of the day, it's just one of those experiences that I would highly recommend. You don't know what exactly you're going to experience, and that's part of the fun. Just take it all in and see where it goes.
Thank you so much. That's actually a perfect segue before we wrap up. If either of you have anything else that you want to share about or would recommend to people studying abroad, any advice that you may have, tips and things, just kind of last few pointers before we wrap up.
I'd say one of the main advices I got when I was going abroad was just to keep an open mind. You're going to be in a foreign environment, maybe a foreign culture, and you will experience a great deal of like uncomfort, but I would say don't let that fear or uncomfort stop you from doing things that you probably wouldn't do here, like because those are the points and times when you actually grow. So like I guess like lean into that uncomfort a little bit, and yeah, just keep an open mind while you're in these new experiences.
Yeah, I think for me, so most people who know me know I'm super picky, like when it comes to food. So, so one of the things I would tell you to do is try all the food. Because like you can eat something in America and it'll taste completely different when you eat it in the country of its origin. And it's usually a lot better. So like the first time I had sushi was in Japan, and the first time I had Indian food was in India. And now I'm like to a point where I'm like, why am I even gonna eat it in America? Because it doesn't taste the same. or there are like certain differences and stuff with it. But definitely, like don't be like, I think what Matthew and Joel just said, like don't be afraid to try new things. Good things never come from like, staying in one place. Like go outside your comfort zone, and just have fun.
If I were to say anything to wrap this up, I would say definitely go. Whether it's for a semester abroad or for a week abroad, it doesn't matter. The experience that you will get from it is something that you will never forget, and it'll just improve your perspective and give you and just give you kind of like an upper hand on even like sharing like a different perspective. Another reason why you should go now is because when you graduate, the time for you to go away and be able to do something like this with people your age who can mentor you and take you throughout the land, because the whole program is set around this place, it's going to be really hard to find, or you're going to have to pay a lot of money to do it. Once you get into the working world, trying to find that time is going to be difficult. So definitely do.
What a sermon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I from me, I would definitely say kind of all of the aboves in terms of having an open mind, definitely going. If your school has an abroad opportunity, you should absolutely see if you can go. If finances are an issue, the first thing that I did after I found out that I got accepted to the first program was I went immediately to financial aid to see like, what I could do to be able to afford it. And you got this scholarship as well. So for me, I would say to have an open mind, and allow this experience to broaden your perspective, but always remember to be respectful of the culture wherever you're going. I think that it can be easy to go there, view it as a vacation, and kind of just like, like suck up whatever you can out of where you are, and you should do that, but you should do so respectfully. Whatever you can to get to know the people there. So learning some different phrases in the language, like doing your Googles, download some apps on your phone to start getting your feet wet. Trying different foods, like Briana said, and trying not to be disrespectful. Like if someone serves you something and it looks weird, like what's the worst that could happen? Like, at least try it and try to be respectful. I think that that's really important, and something that some people don't always think about, because you're kind of thinking of the same mindset that you have here. So, definitely be respectful. So with that, the deadline for the scholarship is November 1st. You can find the link to it on the BMB Scholars website, and click and apply, and it is study abroad right there. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you have any questions at all, you want to hear more about Matthew's experience, Joelle's experience, or Brianna's experience, or mine, you can reach out to us and we would be more than happy to help. So thanks so much.
Bye.
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 Thank you.